guys, it is April from Getting Hooga With It. Today I'm here to talk about what I read in November. I had quite a hit and miss month. Honestly, it wasn't the best reading month I've ever had. So let's get into it. So we're gonna work from 3 stars to my highest, which was just 1 4-star. It was not a great reading month. The first book I want to talk to you about is The Wonder by Emma Donoghue. This is a very well-loved book on BookTube, and it just was not for me. I got very bored. I was so bored reading this month. I can't even tell you how bored I've been reading. This is about an Irish little girl who lives in a very small village in Ireland, and I think it's the 18th century, 19th century, I can't remember which century, but essentially she is not eating, and she hasn't been eating for days and weeks, and everyone is curious. Many people in the town think that she's like next to saintly, and a nurse is hired to go and see if it's true or not. So she literally stays by this little girl's side for hours on end, and she takes shifts with a nun. And nothing happened in this book until the last maybe 50 pages. It was really just her sitting and looking at the child and kind of judging the situation, which I can kind of understand. She wasn't the most likable character, but at the same time, I would go in really suspicious as well. So I understood that, but I was just incredibly bored. I didn't think this was anything to phone home about. I didn't enjoy it really at all. I did finish it, and the ending I enjoyed. Thank God for the ending, because if I got to the end and didn't like that as well, this probably would have been a 2-star for me. That said, a lot of people have loved this book, so please, you know, it might just be me, but it was not for me at all, at all. Next up, I want to talk to you about a nonfiction. I ended up participating in Nonfiction November without even meaning to. I'm glad that I did though, because I did learn a lot of interesting things about Russian history. I got on a Russian kick like no other this month. For some reason, it was all about Russia. So I picked up first The Romanov Sisters by Helen Rappaport, and this is about the Tsar and the daughters of Nicholas and Alexandra, and we go from their birth until their death, and it was very fascinating, and I was very interested in the whole storyline because I didn't know anything about the Romanovs at all. This follows them from young girls until the Russian Revolution, which was their downfall. And it really was interesting. I did find this far too long. Like the author was very good at details, but it didn't, it made it lag a little bit because of all of the little details in here that we were learning about each and every girl, about like the crushes that they had and just their daily habits, that I didn't think we needed that much information. I really didn't think we needed that much information, but I was fascinated, and I was kind of cringing, worrying for all of them as we moved on in the story. We know that it didn't end well at all, and so for this family, and so it did drive me in that way to keep like turning the pages, although I did listen to this on audiobook, which was fine. Yeah, but I think because it was just way too long and just too detailed about things that weren't super important, I ended up giving this 3 stars. But it did spark like a huge interest for me in Russian history and just everything Russia, so I'm really grateful for it for that. Another 3-star read for me, which is shocking because I was sure this is going to be a 5-star read for me. Like, I was sure. It is Hotel on the Corner of Bitter and Sweet by Jamie Ford. This was fine. This is about a man named Henry Lee, and in 1986 he goes to the Panama Hotel because the Panama Hotel is finally opening its doors after years and years and years, and people are able to go in and go through things there. Essentially, people that were sent to Japanese internment camps first stopped at the Panama Hotel, and all of their belongings were taken, I think. And so he is going there to find out whatever happened to a childhood friend of his named Kiko. Kiko was Japanese, and then Henry is Chinese. And Henry has a very strict upbringing. His parents are very anti-Japanese because of the history between the Chinese and the Japanese and what his father personally went through in China. And they do not approve and would not approve of Henry having a friend who was Japanese. I thought this was going to pull at my heartstrings a lot more. It didn't at all. I really wanted it to. I didn't really care for the characters, which was very strange because they're set in this awful situation. I found the characters flat, if that makes any sense. Henry's father, I was waiting for Henry's father to have shifts within him and for it to be a heck of a lot more complicated than just plain old straightforward, you know, prejudice against Japanese people. I wanted there to be more behind it for him, and I never really felt like I got much more from him. I found Kiko's parents, well, delightful. I really liked them, and I think I cared about Kiko's parents the most out of everyone in this book. I found them also incredibly flat, just consistently and constantly optimistic. Even when like they're in an internment camp and things aren't looking good, they're just like, be nice. And like, it was too extreme. And I like my characters to have depth, and none of the characters, in my opinion, had any depth. Now, this is a very unpopular opinion. I'm probably going to get like 17 million dislikes on this video because of that, because most people read this book and give it 5 stars and loved it, but I just didn't care about any of the characters. And I would like to think of myself as an empathetic person, but I want to empathize with people that I think are real, and they never, ever felt real to me. So that was a bust for me. Next up, back to the Russian kick. Stalin's Daughter. This is about Svetlana, his daughter. This book won a lot of awards. It won the Writers' Trust Prize for Nonfiction, the Hilary Weston. It won the BC National Award for Canadian Nonfiction. And it won the BBC Taylor Prize. Now, I thought this was incredibly well researched. This is about Stalin's daughter and her situation in which she had a very difficult upbringing, like very, very, very upsetting. People left her life very randomly and no one ever explained where they went. Her mother committed suicide, and she, we meet her in this book. We start out where she is leaving Russia. She is in India. And she was able to get out of Russia like one time, and that was to go to India. And there she goes to the American embassy and asks for them to help her. And she comes to America. And it is about her story and her experience in Russia under Stalin, who was an incredibly manipulative man towards her, and about trying to live in America and make her own name for herself, and yet she knows that the only way to really survive is to use her name. So she wrote a lot of books about her life, and that was kind of how she survived, was through the royalties and the money that she got from those books. I struggled with this book for a few reasons. I struggled with the author's portrayal of Svetlana. She portrays her in the love category as a very pathetic, very desperate woman. And truthfully, she really did put herself out there so many times to so many men and just wanted to be loved and accepted, and she wanted to build a life with someone. And, you know, she had just had so many tragedies in the love department. And I almost felt like the author was not making fun of her, but kind of. Like, why hasn't she learned yet? And what I find frustrating about that is I really think that Svetlana suffered from like major daddy issues. Her father was so manipulative, so incredibly manipulative. She was told over and over again as a child that she was the boss and that she made the rules and stuff, and he would ask her to like boss him around a little bit, and then he would proceed to chastise her and really objectify her. He would make her sing and dance in front of friends and family who would come over, and if she refused to do so, he would grab her hair, bring her up, and she was to be a spectacle. So over and over again, she was objectified. Now, if you're objectified repeatedly as a child and the only male figure in your life is doing that, what are you going to do as you grow up? Like, either you're gonna have some sort of self-realization, you're gonna go to therapy and like sort through that stuff, or you're going to be objectified again and not know your worth otherwise. And I really struggled with the author's portrayal of her as being someone who was just desperate. She was desperate, but it was not her fault. I really didn't think it was her fault. That said, Svetlana in this book was not incredibly well, you know, she wasn't very likable. I didn't care for her all that much a lot of the time. Some of the things that she said and did. There was one point in this book where like she's moved to America and she is in like a really crappy situation financially, and she decides to move back to Russia. And I honestly, I nearly threw the book across the room because I was like, how can you go back? How did she decide that that was a good idea? I don't know. So at that point I was like, okay, I don't have very much sympathy for her anymore. And I'm probably, you know, there were probably plenty of reasons that she did that, but I just could not believe that she went to so many great lengths to leave and then decided to go back. Struggled with it. I did like it. It was very fascinating, super well researched, but again, 3 stars. Okay, so the last book that I finally read this book. Oh my God, how many? I've literally been reading this since January. It is When Things Fall Apart, Heart Advice for Difficult Times by Pema Chodron. I enjoyed this book. It's very tiny, 146 pages. And it's got all these different chapters with life lessons. And they are really, really good life lessons. Very difficult to put into practice. They're very much, this book is very much about your mindset and shifting your mindset, which is easier said than done. But every time I would read a chapter and I was like, oh yeah, I should look at things that way. Like, it really did speak the truth and like really did give me something to aspire to. So I didn't give it 5 stars, but I gave it 4 stars. And I did enjoy this. I will keep it on my shelves in case I want to go back to it. But yeah, like that was not the best reading month, right? That was not great. So there's that. I did have the most amazing October reading month ever. I had like so many 5-star reads, so I can't really complain about November. And I did learn an incredible, like, so much about Russian history, so I loved that. Let me know in the comments below what you read this November. And did you have any books that you were just like, I am so bored? Did you have any duds to you? I realize that everyone is different. So many of these books were kind of duds to me, but that's just me. And that's what the beauty of reading is, that everyone is different and everyone is going to get something out of different books. So let me know about your disappointments in the reading department, and I will see you next time. Okay, bye guys.